welcome. You're listening to The Real Truth About You, and my name is Will Sinclair, and this is a show that's kind of dedicated towards us journeying together to discover our true selves, and then using that knowledge and that insight and that revelation in our lives to live the most abundant and blessed and full life that we can. And today I want to talk to you about a few things. Actually, I always say, oh, I'm going to talk about, but then, like I said in my last podcast, I don't always know what I'm going to talk about. I have an idea, and then whatever comes out, and I just pray that whatever you hear is what you're meant to hear. And I would actually recommend that. I've taken many courses and things, and they always say, take the best and leave the rest. So if something jumps out to you, then great. If not, then it might jump out to you later. You might remember it later, or it might not be for you at all. But this, actually, I was reading a book. Actually, I was listening to a book and by Richard Rohr, and he happens to be a Catholic priest. He's a contemplative person, and he runs the Center for Action on Contemplation, CAC.org. Anyway, Center for Action and Contemplation, or Off Action and Contemplation, whatever it is, CAC.org. You can look him up. And I was listening when I'm talking to you about sometimes something jumps out at you and sometimes it doesn't. I was listening to the book that he has called The Art of Letting Go. And the premise of the book is basically that we always try to add things to our life. Even the process of saying we need to be awakened is a process of adding to your life. We need to add more vehicles. We need to add more things. We purchase more things, or we attain more things, or we try to get deeper into a religion, but we're always adding and adding and adding. And he talks about St. Francis, and he's a Franciscan himself. And he talks about St. Francis and the spirituality of letting go. He used to call it the spirituality of subtraction, where you're actually looking at taking things away from your life so that you can come closer to the God within you. And the more you uncover, it's like taking things away. The more you uncover from inside of your life, the more you'll begin to see that light in you, which is God. But I want to talk to you about a few things today. One is about journaling, and my wife hates journaling. She absolutely hates it. I asked her about it. She goes, you know what? I journaled because people told me I had to, but I got nothing out of it. And it's kind of true. If it's not for you, then it's not for you, right? Maybe there's some other way. Or I always think that if God wants you to remember something, then you're going to remember it anyway. But for me, I find journaling something very important. For me, it's almost like as you journal, you become aware of certain things. It's not a diary. It's not just a record keeper. It is that in a way, but it's not about just keeping track of your meditation times or your life or insights in your life or awareness of your life, because I want to share with you today something that transpired from my last episode 24 when I talked to you, my last podcast, episode 24, when I talked to you about my mother's life and how she passed on things in her life to me and how I passed that on to my kids. And they weren't great things. It stemmed from a lot of anger and abuse issues, and I shared in there how she had tried to, or attempted to, murder her stepfather in his sleep because he was a wicked man, or according to them, or whatever he was. And that's not what this is about. But I had a realization, a kind of an aha moment, an awakening, you might want to say, to something that happened, something that's going on in my life at this point. And right now, this is the end of August, heading into September of 2016. So if you're listening to this on Mars, this is an old recording. Maybe I'm dead by now. I don't know. But anyway, this is 2016, heading into the fall, autumn, whatever you want to call it. And something's been going on in my life. And I journaled it. On August 23rd, I woke up. I think it was 5:40 in the morning. And I had a realization and awareness in my life. And if you ever listen to episode 24, I would encourage you to go back and listen to it. And it was called I think it was called Breaking the Cycle. And I noticed in my life that lately that I've been turning everything into something funny. Like I would talk to people and I would say something funny about it, and they would either laugh or look at me like I was from another planet. And I noticed I was doing that a lot, and I haven't done things like that. I do have a bit of a funny personality, maybe in this voice, or listening to this podcast, you might not think so. But I actually do have one of those improv personalities that seem to have smart quips and funny things to say. And I enjoy life that way. But this was becoming overboard. Like it was almost like every turn somebody would say something and I would turn it into something funny. Or I would try and say something opposite it that's funny. And I was doing it a lot. And I also noticed that I was putting my wife down a lot. I was nitpicking her, and I was, oh, you're not doing this right, and or why don't you try? You're not this, or you're not that, or gee, you're always this. And I was even turning those things into a joke, and we'd be in public, and I would be putting her down, and I came into an awareness that I was doing that, and I mentioned this in another podcast, that I was nitpicking her, and I was doing things that were degrading for her and putting her down in public. And I'm not saying I was calling her names in public and things, but it was just stuff that was like, I haven't done that for a long time. But anyway, I had become aware of the fact that I was doing this. And we talk about awareness. I've talked about awareness before, about when you become aware of something, either you just become aware of it and acknowledge that you're aware of it. You don't have to sit and analyze it, because a lot of that means that you're actually not addressing it. You're trying to control it. And so just don't, just let the awareness be there. Be it like, I was aware that I was doing this, turning everything into funny comments and overboard, and aware that I was nitpicking my wife, or you're aware that you're angry really fast, or you have a temper that you just become aware of it, right? Just throw it out there, give it to your God, but pray about it, but don't try to analyze it, because when it's time, you'll come into an understanding of it. You'll become more aware of what it is. But anyway, I want to talk to you about that, because that happened to me. And you may find me kind of dipping away from the microphone a little bit, or you might hear pages turning, because I actually wrote about this in my journal, and I kind of got away from my journal for a while. But just imagine a journal as a book, or something that you can write in. And I would say write. Rather than type it up on a computer, because files get lost. And I know books get lost too. And I know books can burn in a fire or get damaged by water. But there's something about writing with your hands. I'm assuming if you have hands to write, and I'm sorry if you don't, but I'm assuming if you have hands to write, then write with your hands. And there's something about that act. It's like speaking it out. I've been to enough counseling sessions that I know that as soon as you start talking, like a good counselor wants you to arrive at your own solution. And you get there by him prompting you or her prompting you with questions and things. And the more you talk, the more comes out. And I know in my spiritual direction, it's the same thing with my spiritual director. I'll always go into my session with her, and it'll be like, okay, I'm going to talk about this, this, and this, because I've journaled it and it seems important. I'm going to talk. Then I open my mouth, and it's kind of like the podcasting world here. I open my mouth and something else comes out, and then we go down a different path altogether. But trust that you're meant to do that. That happens in life for a reason. It's your body telling you, or it's your God telling you, leading you where you need to go. So if you don't journal and you think you might like to, I would encourage you to find a book that you really like, some kind of notebook, and a pen that you like writing with, and just keep it by you. I have a lot of my journals. I still have. I found them in a box. right? So there's something about journals, and I was able to go back through journals over time and stuff. But anyway, I want to talk to you about a journal entry I put in on August the 23rd, and you'll hear me flip pages once in a while. And I was talking about Richard Rohr, that I was listening to his book, and I kind of sidetracked a little bit. I was listening to his book, The Art of Letting Go, and I was kind of listening to it on my phone, and then not listening to it, and then listening to it, and then not listening to it. But it got to the point where I thought, you know what, I should just go back and start from scratch, start the book all over. And I'm an audiobook listener, and I find it more difficult to read because I'm a slow reader. So even though I absorb like 80% of what I read and comprehend it, it takes me a long time to get there, and so I get frustrated with it. So anyway, but this book that I was listening to, The Art of Letting Go by Richard Rohr, and it's one of his older books. I went back, and all of a sudden, there's a poem in there right at the beginning that I had listened to, and actually listened to a few times, but didn't get what the poem was really about. And all of a sudden, I went back, and because of what happened on August the 23rd in the morning, I went back, and those words just jumped out at me. But the funny thing is, they jumped out at me on the 22nd. Yeah, there's a timeline for you. But anyway, I'm going to share that poem with you in a little bit. But the essence of, I'm going to share this personal thing that happened to me. And I'm just going to lay it out there. And you may think it's a ramble, or you may think it's, duh, I don't really need to hear all this, but I'm going to say it anyway. So I was sleeping. So here I am. I'm aware, and I'm hoping this is going to help you. I'm aware of the fact that I'm turning everything into something funny, right? And I'm going overboard with it, but I didn't really analyze it because I don't want to. You shouldn't do that. You shouldn't sit and stew over it, right? Don't try and control the whole thing and clamp it down with your thoughts. And also, I was aware that I was nitpicking my wife like crazy, it was just to the point of distraction. So I had gone to bed on the 22nd. Like I'd re-listened to Richard Rohr. I was vacuuming. We run a retreat house in a camp by a lake in Canada. And I was vacuuming, and I was listening on my headphones, and I was listening, and all of a sudden he read this poem, which I'd listened to a few times already and didn't quite understand it. And all of a sudden it jumped out at me. And obviously I was ready to hear it. And you know how people can say it all your life, and all of a sudden somebody else says it, and all of a sudden it means something to you. Well, that's exactly what happened with this poem. And so at night, I went to bed, and I just asked the question, like, I wonder why I'm doing this. Why am I doing this, making everything funny all of a sudden? Well, I woke up in the morning, and I just had a dream. And in my dream, some of the dreams you can remember, I guess you dream all the time, but in this dream, I was being introduced to somebody, and I said something really funny or off the wall in my introduction and my hello to this person after this other person had introduced me. And what I said actually seemed to hurt them. And I couldn't get it. I just like, oh, sorry about that. I didn't realize this was the way. And it hurt them. And so I apologized. But then I woke up, and all of a sudden I realized that I was reverting back to my childhood. I realized that what I was doing was exactly what I did in my childhood. That was one of the first things I became aware of. And remember, I did not analyze this. I just left it up to my God to reveal it to me at a time when I'm ready to accept it. And that's what happens in your life, in your journey of healing, and your journey of discovering the true you, right? The true self. That happens, that you just uncover something, you just become aware of something when you're ready to accept it. So I became aware of the fact that I was reverting back to my childhood. And because I had had an abusive childhood, I did that all the time. I had no self-confidence. So what I used to do is, and I remember it very distinctly, I used to turn everything into something funny because then people noticed me. They would say, "Oh, your kid's really funny, ha ha ha," right? Or I would tell a joke or something like that. And then as I became a teenager, I started getting into the music industry, and I started playing in pubs when I was like 14 years old, 15 years old, that kind of thing. And I noticed I played guitar, and I noticed that when I strapped a guitar around my neck, all of a sudden, people noticed me. So I was doing, and the more outlandish I was, I got into my late teens, and I would jump off of stages into crowds while I was playing guitar and doing a lead guitar solo, and everybody thought it was just amazing and things like that. And it was just, I would do things that attracted attention. And I used to wear my clothes inside out, and I was doing things that attracted attention because I craved attention. And I craved basically to be loved is what I was. Not that I was never loved in my life, but I was a craving attention. And that's one of the things I became aware of. So when I woke from this dream, I realized that first and foremost, I was reverting back to my childhood. I was doing the same things. And the thing that really stood out to me is back then, I could not accept who I was as a child. I couldn't accept my impoverished self, my poor self-esteem, my image of who I was. I could not accept it. I did not want to be that kid. And so I always imagined myself being something else, something better, something greater. And then last year this is 2016, so 2015, I discovered I got cancer. And it was stage 3 esophageal cancer, GE junction cancer, and they had to take out my esophagus and put my stomach into my chest and all the surgeries and all the radiations and the chemos and all that kind of thing. And this is not about that. This is not about the cancer. This is not a cancer story, right? This is a story about me waking up and realizing that I was doing the same thing as I was doing as a child because I didn't like back then who I was. And I realized as I journaled that I also was beginning to not like who I was today. I was having a hard time accepting the fact that I now have new limitations in my life. There are things that I cannot do. I mean, nothing is impossible, and certainly nothing is impossible to God. And so many times I've been battling with even in Wayne Dyer's book, I have to be honest, and he talks about the I am experience and about talking yourself and basically believing yourself into healing. And there's more to it than that, but you have to read the book. And there was something about this whole journey that I was on. And that when you hear things about, you would hear about, say, an Olympian, an athlete or something, and they would say, yeah, my doctors told me that I would never run again after that accident, and here I am competing in the Olympics. And so those are the things I was looking at. My doctors were telling me I had limits. They were telling me that I can't do certain things. I can't do things the way I used to. I'll never be the same person I was before my surgery, before my cancer. And because I'd fought most of my life to push beyond who I was, because I'd limited myself so much in who I thought I was as a child that I didn't want to be that. I wanted to be something great. I wanted to be the best at what I could do. I did not want to be a failure. I did not want to be a flop. And something I realized was also that I wanted to be the person who served others. So in my Christian walk, and I'm not saying you have to be a Christian, but in my Christian walk, I always saw those who serve and those who are being served. So the ones in my view who are being served were the people who are poor, who were suffering, people who were dying, people impoverished by life somehow. And there was people who came to their rescue and saved them. So, and I say that in inverted commas and quotation marks kind of thing. And I realized as I'm journaling that I was prejudiced, that I saw two classes of people. I saw the upper class in my mind, as I'm talking about. I saw an upper class of people who I wanted to belong to. They're the ones who serve the lower class. The lower class, the poor people, the ones on the streets, the ones in Africa who are dying of starvation. They were all the lower class in my mind. And I'm not saying that they are. This is in my mind. So this is what I perceived in my mind, that there were two classes of people, and I wanted desperately to be in the upper class. I wanted to be the one serving, the powerful one, not the one who was lowly, not the one who was outcast, not the one who was suffering, not the one who is impoverished. I wanted to be the powerful upper class. And I realized it was like an aha moment that I am the suffering person. I am the impoverished person. And let me explain this first before you start thinking, no, that's not the way it works or whatever. But all of a sudden I realized that I was the suffering person. I was the one that needed the help. I was the one that was in pain. I was the one that is impoverished. And I was the one who was needing help. I needed the power class, the upper class to help me. I was the lower class, not the upper class. But then there came to be a point where I actually realized that that's not the way it is at all. There is only one class. There is only people. There is only people. And in that, there are people who help other people. And there are people who hurt. There are people who are starving. There are people who are impoverished. People who are suffering. People who are doing well. People who are enjoying life. People who hate life. But there is only one people. And I think the person who showed that the most was Jesus Christ. And Jesus Christ showed that in the fact that wherever there was pain, he was drawn to heal people, to cure their sufferings. Yet he also became, per se, the victim when they killed him on the cross, when they crucified him on the cross. And so he took on both roles. So he's telling us there's one person. There is only one class of people, and it's called people, humanity. And I realized that we're all just one. It's not two classes of people. But I also realized, and my whole discovery and through my journaling, that when my spiritual director had asked me quite some time ago, why do you aspire to be in business? And I always have. I've always aspired to be in business. I wanted to be a successful business person because to me, that was success. I didn't want to be a successful runner or a successful athlete or whatever it is, or I wanted to be successful in business because to me, that was the powerhouse. Earning a high income or, having lots of employees or people or whatever that brought, right? It was just, to me, that was almost the upper class. And I didn't get why, and I couldn't answer why I aspired to business until I had this aha moment, until I realized that I wanted to be something greater than I was. And I'm not saying you cannot aspire to something, but just hear me out. I wanted to aspire to something more, something greater, not because that is a good thing to do or that's a lofty thing to do. It's always good to be the best that you can be. But I wanted to be more because I could not accept who I was. I did not want to be who I was. I could not accept the moment, the present moment. I could not accept who I was right now. You cannot do anything about your past. And you can't also do anything, despite what you think, you can't really do anything about your future because your future may never come. But the point is, I lived in the future. I lived in the future me, the future business power professional, because I could not accept who I am today or who I was. And I am still on that journey of accepting who I am in the moment. Now, if you ever when you get into this journey of discovery, when you get into the discovering who the true self is, not the false self, when you discover who you are on that journey, on a meditative journey, on a contemplative journey, on a journey to discover the divine, you will always hear about the present moment. You'll never hear about the future, or you'll hear very little about the future you. You'll hear about the present moment, the now. And Wayne Dyer sometimes calls it the I am experience. He ties that all into what he calls the I am experience. And Richard Rohr, who I just love because I was actually, I don't know if I was praying, but I was looking for, because I'm Catholic, I'm a Catholic Christian, and that's my divine, right? My God is, that Catholic Christian God. But anyway, I was praying for or asking for a Catholic version, someone who's a Catholic version of Wayne Dyer, because I really like Wayne Dyer. I don't agree with everything he says, and you might. That's up to you. I'm not telling you what to believe. I'm only telling you what I can only tell you what I believe and what I've experienced. I can only share with you my life. But I was looking for a Catholic version of Wayne Dyer, and I came across Richard Rohr. He's a Catholic priest, and I think he's in Pecos, New Mexico or something like that. But anyway, very contemplative and very close to Wayne Dyer. It can almost be interchanged in a lot of ways. But so there's a lot of similarities and a lot of truths in both paths. And in fact, a lot of them is one path. But anyway, you'll always hear about the now experience, the God experience, being centered in the now, accepting who you are right now. Because what I've discovered is there is no future you, because the future you never comes. As soon as the future arrives, it's the present moment. There is no future. It does not exist. The future you is a fallacy. It is not. You might have images in your mind of what you plan to do. And remember, I didn't say that you cannot think of yourself in the future. You cannot plan or aspire for the future to do the best, or to go on some trip, or do some ministry or missions work, or do, I'm not saying you cannot do that. But what I'm saying is you have to accept who you are now. If you are living in the future but cannot accept the now, is because you are not loving yourself for who you are right now. And so you have to go through a process, like I am going through a process, through meditation, through listening to books, through becoming aware, or reading books, becoming aware of your life, of allowing God to reveal things about your past, some truths, some moments, allowing, like Wayne Dyer always says, when the student is ready, the teachers will appear. And that could be something you see, something you read, something that touches you on TV, or an aha moment you become aware of. Those are the teachers in your life. But you need to accept who you are right now at this very moment. whether yourself is where you're meant to be or not. Like whether you're fully discovered, and maybe some people call it enlightened, or fully aware, or you're not, or you're filled with anger, or you're filled with confusion about your life, or you're frustrated, or you're happy and you're joyful genuinely, right? You need to accept who you are right at this moment and say to yourself, it is what it is until it isn't. Right now, I am who I am. I cannot be anybody but who I am. And I want to accept and to love and to embrace me. Because I guarantee you, when you start to accept and love and embrace yourself, your life will change for the better. You will become more aware of who you are. It's though your inner God, the God within you, and I believe that God is within each one of us. There's a beauty of God, and it's like God, I always try to figure out how this works, and Wayne Dyer talks about a bucket of ocean. You take a bucket, and God represents ocean, and you dip that bucket into the ocean, and you pull out that bucket of water, and the bucket is you. Is what is in the bucket any less ocean? It's not. It is still the same components, the same everything that is ocean, and that is God. God placed a spark. He's placed himself, or however you view God, inside of you. And I believe in my journey of discovery that it's like, the only thing I can think of is like a magnet, and God's like a magnet, and there's metal inside of you, and that's also God. And the magnet is just attracts that metal until there's a full connection. And it's like God is attracted to God. Maybe I'm not making sense here. But anyway, it's something that's being slowly revealed to me, and I'm just beginning to become aware of it. But I want to read to you this gravity's law. You'll hear me turning pages right now. I'm on my journal. There's one page, and yeah, lots of them here. I am experience. I've been talking about that. God's been talking to me about the I am experience for a long time. He's also been talking to me about prepare the way of the Lord, make straight his paths. And what did I think? I thought it was all about me doing stuff, going out and being in ministry, going out and preparing the way of God in people's lives, And maybe there's some truth to that, but you know what? It was probably mostly my life he's talking about. So anyway, this is a poem, and I'm going to read it to you, and I'm going to be honest with you. I don't know if this is a copywritten poem. I see it all over the internet. And it's by Rainer Marie Rilke, and I'm not even sure. I tried to find out when she was alive, and it's being translated into English. And but I want to read it to you. I've seen it all over the internet, and everybody quotes it, and everybody writes the whole thing down. So maybe it's in the public domain. I'm not sure. But if it's not, I already apologize. So anyway, this is a poem, and it didn't strike me until later. It didn't strike me. I heard it like a month ago or 3 weeks ago, and I listened to it over and over, and it didn't strike anything in me at all. Then all of a sudden, it hit me. And I'm going to read it to you right now. Okay? So this is called How Surely Gravity's Law. How Surely Gravity's Law by Rainer Marie Rilke. And it's from her book, Rilke's Book of Hours, and it's Love Poems to God. All right, translated by Anita Barrows and Joanna Macy. And here's me turning the pages. You can hear me. Okay, so I've got my book here. All right, here it goes. How surely gravity's law. How surely gravity's law, strong as an ocean current, takes hold of even the strongest thing, and there's something about thing in here, and pulls it toward the heart of the world. Each thing, each stone, blossom, and child is held in place. Only we in our arrogance push out beyond what we belong to for some empty freedom. If we surrender to Earth's intelligence, we could rise up rooted like trees. And that meant a lot to me. I photograph trees a lot. Instead, we entangle ourselves in knots of our own making and struggle, lonely and confused. So, like children, we begin again to learn from the things because they are in God's heart. They have never left him. This is what the things can teach us. To fall patiently, to trust our heaviness. Even a bird has to do that before he can fly. And that whole poem just really touched me. I underlined a thing that says, I need to trust my heaviness and learn to fall before I can fly. And to me, that is accepting who you are right now. That's the heaviness. Maybe you don't like who you are. Maybe you love who you are, but you haven't really realized about accepting who you are right now on your journey to discovering the real you. And I'm sure if you're like fully alert, fully aware, fully awakened, fully God conscious, or whatever you want to call it, I'm sure you're probably not even listening to this podcast. I'm sure it's the people like me who are listening to this podcast, people like you who are on a journey, who are on a journey of discovery. Maybe you're discovering who you truly are. Maybe you're discovering who God really is in your life. But you need to trust, as I need to trust, that heaviness. And that heaviness is what brings us back to earth. Gravity pulls us back to earth. There's a law of gravity. It pulls us back to earth. And that's who we are. And she's talking about accepting who you are and accepting who God is in your life. That's the heaviness. And it will draw you back to the heart, back to earth, back to God, back to your true self. Trust the heaviness. I also wrote a quote, my quote, less is more desirable than more. Less is more desirable than more. And I actually felt that Rainer's poem was my life. I actually felt when I really read it, it's my life. It is my life. Anyway, I'm hoping this podcast didn't like drag you on. And remember what I said, that there's nothing wrong with aspiring for things in the future. There's nothing wrong with wanting to be the best photographer you can be or be the best person you can be. There's nothing wrong with aspiring to be a top business professional, as long as you love and accept who you are. Because when you do, and this is important, when you do accept and love who you are right now, then those things that you become, those things that you are, will come from your heart. They'll come from your divine. You'll be inspired in different ways. And I'm not saying there has to be a purpose in your life, because I always thought there had to be. There had to be a reason for your life and a purpose for your life. And I remember my wife saying to me, if you laid on the couch and did nothing else for the rest of your life, God would not love you any less than he does right now, because he loves you abundantly. Anyway, My name is Will Sinclair, and you've been listening to The Real Truth About You. And you can go to our website at therealtruthaboutyou.com. You can download more episodes, and hopefully I'm going to put up more resources. I'm not always on top of the ball that way, but hopefully I'm going to put up more resources, and you can download things. And anyway, help us out, help me out, promote this podcast to other people. If they don't have the internet, you can download it for them, put it on a stick drive or a thumb drive, whatever you want to call it, or burn it onto a CD. Or if you're really, they don't have any of that, you can send it away and create a vinyl record. How's that? And they can play it on their old megaphone player or whatever you call it. Anyway, because anytime you help somebody else and you want to share this information, go ahead and share it with somebody. When you help somebody else, you also help yourself. And when you discuss things in your life with good, reliable people who love you and won't just tell you the things just to please you and win your friendship, but will tell you the truth and with love, when you share something about your life, you always benefit from that. When you help others, you help yourself. So anyway, thank you so much for listening. I love you tons, and you guys are awesome. Thank you so much for listening to this podcast. Remember to go to therealtruthaboutyou.com, or if you want to, you can contact me. I'll try to reply as fast as I can. I do in my cancer recovery process right now, 2016. I'm not always on the ball, but whenever I can, I will. You can email me at support@therealtruthaboutyou.com. That's support@therealtruthaboutyou.com. Or you can go to the website at therealtruthaboutyou.com, and you can just go to the contact form and fill that out, and that'll get to me too. So anyway, thanks for listening. I look forward to talking to you again in the next episode of The Real Truth About You. I love you tons. Have an awesome day, because you rock.